All right, hello everyone and welcome. This fine Sunday, we are going to be drafting some Core Set 2020 on Ranked, and you are going to join me for the entire draft process. So let's go ahead and spend our 5,000 gold. All right, so what do we have here? The things that immediately stand out to me are usually going to be in the rare slot. So we see Draw from Dreams. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom in any order. This is basically Dig Through Time. Although it doesn't cost potentially 2 mana, it's not instant speed. In draft, it's still nice to be able to kind of look past all of the lands that you don't want, or perhaps hit some lands as well. So this is definitely a consideration. I do like blue in this current format. Let's see, we've also got Warden of Evos Isle. Creature spells with flying cost 1 less to cast. The flyer stick is pretty good because in most draft formats you're going to want to be able to fly over your opponent's creatures to kind of break through board stalls. And then for our second uncommon, we've got Yarok's Fenlurker. Black, enters the battlefield. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand, and it has a shade style effect of being able to pump at instant speed for a given amount of black mana. I'm not real wild about this card. Just committing to black really early on is kind of difficult, and it's not the most powerful effect that we can see for that color commitment versus Drawn from Dreams. You know, you can find just about anything that you're looking for in the top 7 cards of your library. We've also got Salvager of Ruin. Sacrifice it. We get to choose a permanent in our battlefield that was put there this turn. We get to return it to our hand. So, pretty neutral when it comes to the color commitment. However, I'm just not too wild about this card. A couple of other standout cards. I really like Cloudkin Seer. It's just a good old-fashioned 2-for-1. A 2-1 with flying for 3 is not that bad, but when we get to draw a card, you know, kind of a nice thing there. Sanitarium Skeleton has been pretty good in the sacrifice decks, but again, that's not what I'm here to first pick. So let's go ahead and do the Drawn from Dreams. Next thing we get is Golos. Okay. Search your library, enter the battlefield for a land, put it on the battlefield tapped. That's pretty nice. Even if we're just a 2-color deck, that can be pretty effective. You know, pretty akin to a sad robot. For an extra mana, you get a 3/5 instead of a 2/4. And of course, if we end up 5 colors somehow, it's got a pretty powerful effect there for 2, and then of course the 5 colors. Loaming Shaman's pretty good. Kind of helps you refuel in the late game. Sometimes you are a little concerned about running out of cards if your games go super long, and Loaming Shaman is just a good on-rate card that can help mitigate that. Manifold Key, you know, very reminiscent of Voltaic Key, but just not what we want to be doing in this format. There's also Sleep Paralysis, which acts pretty effectively as a removal spell in draft. We've also got Frostlinks, which is a good tempo card. However, I do like Golos, you know, just about as close to a Solemn Simulacrum as you can get for an extra mana and a bigger body. You know, plus there's a potential for us to end up a little bit more powerful, but I like being able to ramp as well as fix my colors in draft, so, you know, I'm not picking a common over a rare most times. So let's go ahead and go with Golos. Alright, what else do we have here? So you've got Portal of Sanctuary. You can pay 1 and tap it, return creature you control in each or attached to it to their owner's hands. I'm not real wild about that one. It can be kind of nice in the late game if you have a creature that has an enter the battlefield effect, such as Cloudkin Seer, that you would like to recur. I mean, if you get lucky enough to end up with one of the Cavaliers. I can't remember the name. I think it's Cavalier of Gales, but it brainstorms when it comes down. That can be really powerful, but we don't see that kind of thing yet, so Sage's Rodenizen is kind of a standout to me in blue. When I mentioned Loaming Shaman being quite nice last pack, this is one of the reasons that it's so good. Sage's Rodenizen can be really tough to contend with in the late game. You just don't have that many cards when you're in a 40-card format, and 2 cards a turn, or even sometimes 4 cards a turn, can be really difficult to try to mitigate. So this is definitely a consideration. So is Boreal Elemental. It's just a 3/4 for 5 with flying, which is not too bad. I really value flying pretty high in draft formats, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for our opponents to remove it. I think that Boreal Elemental represents a little bit more of a bomb, so we're going to go ahead and take that. Stay in theme with the blue. Oh, there's another Sage's Row Denizen. One thing to consider is that these cards become much, much, much better once you start to stack them in multiples in your deck. We don't have any instant speeds so far, otherwise Brineborn Cutthroat would be great. Is there a second color that we want to move into? I don't see any other standout colors so far. I like Metropolis Sprite, however Sage's Row Denizen is a little bit better at killing our opponent, so for that reason I'm going to take that. Ooh, shock. So, we've got a couple different removal spells as well as some card selection here. So we've got shock, 1 mana deals 2 damage, pretty good removal. We've also got Aerial Assault. Although it costs 3 mana, it does destroy a tapped creature, and if we have creatures with flying, which we do here with our Boreal Elemental, we can also gain some life. The condition is, of course, it has to be tapped. It's 3 mana and sorcery speed, so I would probably favor the shock if I was going to go that route. We also do have the Anticipate to help us select the cards that we need, but I value removal a little bit more highly over card selection in draft, so for that reason I'm going to take this shock here. It's also important to note that that was a 5th pick shock, and perhaps we're going to get a good opportunity to play some good red cards here. Speaking of which, we see Ember Hauler. It kind of reminds me of Goblin Crater Maker from Guild of Ravnica. It can also shock, however it costs a little bit more to do so, with the upside that it can also hit a colorless permanent. Now with the Ember Hauler, we do have a double red color commitment, but we can sacrifice it in shock. Frostlinks is another consideration here for a good tempo card. Let's see here, we don't have a whole lot of early plays with what we've got so far, so for that reason I'm going to take the Ember Hauler over the Frostlinks. Alright. Not a whole lot for us here in this pack. If I was just going to look at a pure power perspective, I'd probably go with the Wolfkin Bond. I've had a lot of success with this in the past. Obviously it just puts 4 power on the board between 2 different bodies. You can get blown out by a removal spell, so there's always that downside when it comes to an aura. However, I'm looking to be a little bit more aggressive and continue to attack, so I'm not as motivated to take this 2 mana 3/3 defender. So let's see, what do we want to do? Let's just go ahead and take this 2 mana 2 that we know we're going to be able to cast in our blue-red deck. Okay. So, Pattern Matcher. Not too bad. 4 mana 3/3 is not great, however, sometimes you can kind of refill yourself with other cards from your library that share a name with a creature you control. I'm not going to count on that quite yet, however, the fact that it's uncommon may say that there's something worth looking at. However, I prefer to go a little bit more aggressive, and given that we already have a flyer, I'm going to go for this Goblin Bird Grabber here. It's a 2/1, and you can give it flying if you have a creature with flying. It's also notable that it is red. Okay, so I believe this is our original pack with the Salvager of Ruin and the Unholy Indenture. I remember seeing those cards as well as the Raptor here. So, if we're going to stick with a consistent blue-red theme, we got a choice here. So we can choose between Convolute, which is a counterspell for 3. Not a hard counterspell, but, paying for 4 can be difficult in draft, especially if you're casting that on curve. However, we've also got the Goblin Smuggler. So we've got a Prismite, a Bird Grabber, and an Ember Hauler, all of which are 2-power creatures. This can make those unblockable. You got to be able to push your damage through to finish out these draft games. And Convolute is of course a common. I'm pretty confident that we'll see a little bit more Convolutes throughout this draft if we really decide we want those. However, I'm going to take the Goblin Smuggler here to just make sure we can finish off. Alright. And yep, pretty easy Prismite here. It's just about the only card that we want to be casting. Oh, wow, and we are rewarded with the Sage's Row Denizen. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. Again, I mentioned a little bit earlier during this that the Sage's Row Denizens are more powerful when it comes to multiples, simply because you can mill several cards off of it, and You know, I will generally condone mill as a strategy in any constructed format. However, when your opponent has only 40 cards in their library, you know, they often start off with 33 or 34, you know, if they mulligan. Milling 2 cards is a lot better than it seems, especially in draft when the games go long. So let's take this Denizen here. Alright. So, if we're sticking with the blue-red theme, we have Ripscale Predator, and we have Scorch Spitter. Scorch Spitter, a bit more on the aggressive side, it's just a 1-mana 1/1 that deals 1 when it attacks. We've also got Ripscale Predator, which is a great late-game card. I think if we are going to be the style of deck that wants to win with Sage's Road Denizen, we're less concerned about getting damage in the early game. So, you know, especially with Drawn from Dreams, we could end up in a blue-red control style deck. So for that reason, I'm going to take the late game card, which is Ripscale Predator. Really only one card that we intend to use, the Pack Mastiff. It's just you know, a red bear, which is fine for us. We'll take the Active Treason here, and then end up with a basic land. Alright. Wow. So, a lot of really good cards for us here. We have got Flood of Tears. This is a really powerful card that I've made, I've had a couple previous streams where I play the Omniflood combo deck. You know, if you are able to return 4 of your own non-land permanents with this card, you can put a permanent onto the battlefield. Omniscience is the primary card that you go for in that Simic Omniflood deck, but this is just a card that you're going to return a bunch of non-land permanents to their owner's hands with. So, similar to an Upheaval effect, except you're not hitting lands. We've got a little bit more of an aggressive deck here, so that's going to point me in the direction of this Unchained Berserker. Obviously, it's a 3 power attacker for 2, and it has protection from white, so potentially able to attack through our opponent's creatures. And also Cloud Conceer. So let's go ahead and click over here to change the layout. We notice that we have a fair amount of 2-drops and a fair amount of 3-drops as well. So with the number of cheap creatures that we have, and the fact that we're going to want to reuse these Sage's Road Denizens, maybe Flood of Tears is a you know, a reason to push into that effect a little bit more. We might take that. However, there is an Unchained Berserker, which is aggressive. But some of our cards here we have point a little bit more towards a controlling direction. It's just a tough one. I think we're going to take this Flood of Tears, and maybe we'll see another Cloud Conceer, which is good with that, as well as the Sage's Road Denizens. Alright, what do we have here? Fry. Fry's a little bit more difficult to pull off. Obviously, it only hits white or blue creatures, and the ranked draft format is not a sideboard game. So if we do end up against a green-black opponent and we decide to main deck this, it's just not going to do anything. However, if we end up against a white-blue opponent, it's going to be pretty powerful. You know, it can't be countered. It can kill planeswalkers. It can kill creatures. So a bit of a tough decision here. We've already got a couple 5 and 6 drops, so I'm not that attracted to the Boreal Elemental. I guess I'm really not that attracted to anything here, so is there anything we want outside of our colors? I don't think so. We're light on 4 drops. Flying First Strike, not too bad here, but do I really want to take that over the Fry? I guess not. You know what, we might just try Fry out here. See how successful we are. Ooh, Ember Hauler, another great card. There's also Octoprophet. Murder is a great card. In fact, this is a pretty late murder. I mean, we're on pack 3. I think that we normally would have seen this go by now, but given the fact that we already have a Ripscale Predator and we just want some more early creatures, I think we're going to go with a second Hauler. Alright. So, got a couple different things here. Fairy Miscreant, I'm also very happy to have most of the time in my blue decks, especially if I got multiple copies. However, we do see Reduce to Ashes. It's just a great removal spell, so we're going to take that. Alright. So, let's see here. Let's go ahead and take this Metropolis Sprite. It's a cheap creature that can represent 2 damage in the air every turn for a low investment of 2 mana and 1 for every additional damage you want to do. Let's see, we're not too heavy on flyers right now, so I'm not going to go for the Maniacal Rage. That's typically something I'll include in my decks if I'd like to put it on, you know, the flyers that we do have, but got to build that base up first, so for that reason we're going to take this Sprite. Okay. Ooh, Corpse Knight. Pretty good card. Alright, let's see here. So, Reckless Airstrike, 3 to a creature with flying, or destroy artifact. That's just too narrow, especially in, you know, one of games only. We're not playing in a best of 3 format. If we're looking for a little bit more late game punch, I guess we could go for the Frilled Sea Serpent. You know, it's a 4/6 that you can make unblockable, which will close the game out pretty quickly. There's not really anything else I'd like to have, especially since we already have 2 Prismites in our deck. So let's go for that Frilled Sea Serpent. Alright, so we got 2 different combat tricks here that we're looking at. Befuddle. Important to note that it actually does cantrip, and with -4, -0, it can give us the opportunity to trade, so this card could potentially be a 2-for-1. Then we have Infuriate, which gives +3, +2. So this is kind of the point we have to decide, are we more of a control deck or more of an aggressive deck? So let's see how many 2-drops we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We may not end up playing them, but we do have quite a few 2-drops. Not a lot of blue creatures to take advantage of this Sage's Road Denizen, however I hope to make up for that in the future. So for now I think we're primarily a red deck. So I think we're going to go with the Infuriate because we can kill our opponent with it. I mean, it can be a lightning bolt to the face if there's nothing else to do with it, but it can also help some of our smaller creatures trade up. Although I do like cantripping effects, but I think we're a little bit more aggressive, so I'm going to go for the Infuriate here. Yeah, there's not really much that we want to take. Pro-black for a 2/1 is not great. Gauntlets of Light. You know, if you end up with a deck that has a lot of creatures with higher toughness than power, that's great. However, we do have several 2/1s with Prismite. Metropolis Sprite will often be a 2/1. So will the Bird Grabber. So I think we're going to get another Prismite here, although we probably don't intend to. Oh, man. So we were kind of rewarded for this whole aggressive red strategy with the Unchained Berserker still being here, and I'm going to take that. Okay, so here we have a Scorch Spitter, which of course, aggressive red deck, it's going to help push towards that strategy, and we also have the Anvil Rot Raptor. We're a little lacking on 4-drops, however, 4 mana with 1 toughness isn't the best. This is at least going to represent 1 damage. So, do we have a lot of early creatures, and perhaps that's going to be good enough to make up for the absence of a Scorch Spitter, or do we want to go for a 4-mana spell? I think because it has flying, it's also going to help us with our Goblin Bird Grabber, and, obviously ensure that we get damage throughout the game. Let's go with the Raptor. There's really nothing I want to play here, so... Oh boy, I think I'll just take the uncommon. Okay, so Heartpiercer Bow. I like this. I think it does a good... it's a very low investment in terms of trying to equip it. It only costs 1 once you've actually got it on the battlefield, so this could potentially help some of your smaller creatures trade up with a 2 or even 3 toughness creature. We're not looking for anything else out of these last 4 cards, so we're going to go ahead and go with the Heartpiercer Bow. And now that we've got some more flyers, I'm happier to have the Maniacal Rage. 5 mana, 4/4, let's just take it. It's the last thing that we can take. Oh my gosh. Well, we do have a Sorin. Is Sorin something to splash for? Probably not. So what are the other things that we're looking at? Obviously in Magic Arena you do get to keep the cards that you draft, so if Sorin is something that you want for your personal collection, obviously take that right away because it is a mythic and it's a little bit more difficult to acquire digitally. Other than that, Brianborn Cutthroat, I don't think we're going to be playing that. We have a lot of creatures that we plan on playing, a lot of sorcery speed stuff, so it might be difficult to try to pump this thing. However, if you pump it once, I mean, it's a 2-mana 3/2 flash, which is pretty powerful, that has the potential to grow. There is a Cloudkin Seer. I do kind of like that for our deck. You know, we're a bit aggressive. It is a flyer, which is going to go well with both the Bird Grabber and the Maniacal Rage. I mean, this could become a 4/3 flyer, and even though it couldn't block, I mean, that's quite a lot of damage that's coming at you in the air every turn. And it does replace itself, which is a problem that aggressive decks face. You just want to be able to not run out of cards before you kill your opponent. Unsummon, great tempo card to help clear the way. We've also got the Smuggler, but we already have one effect of that, or one copy of that, and that effect is not good in multiples. And then Airstrike, not really something that we want. You know, I do kind of like the Sorin, though not for our deck, and I'm not really looking to put that in any of my decks. So I think the big decision is between the Cloudkin Seer and the Unsummon. We've got Shock, and we've got 2 Ember Haulers. We've also got the Heart Piercer Bow, so we do have ways to clear up the ground. I think what I'm going to go for here is the Cloudkin Seer. Alright. So we have Sephara. Is this something that we can splash? So let's take a look here and see how many flyers we have. So we got 1. I guess that's a half flyer. Got 2, 3, 4. So we basically have 4 flyers, and this is off color. If we wanted to play that, and we'd have to either do 2 things, which is have 1 white mana and 4 flyers, which is a lot. That's all of our flyers that we can see so far. Or have 3 planes in our deck, and given that we have 2 Ember Haulers and we have some double blue cards as well, I don't think that's what we want. So we've got a couple different considerations here. We've got Convolute as a counterspell, Unsummon as a tempo card, and Fairy Miscreant. Kind of depends on what we want to do here. Do we want to clear the way for our ground creatures? If so, I'd say we take the Unsummon, or do we want to put more flyers in the air? In which case we'd go for the Fairy Miscreant. Although we do have quite a few cheap creatures, so in the 2-drop slot, so perhaps Convolute would be a good follow-up. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go for the Convolute here. Oh, there's another Shock. I'm probably going to take that. It's just another cheap removal spell as well as some reach. Let's go for the Shock. Third Shock. Well, you don't really need to convince me. It's just a premium card in this format. Okay, so we have Cerulean Drake, 2 mana 1/1 with flying, pro red, and you can even sacrifice it to counter something similar to the Siren Storm Tamer. I don't think the raid is as good. If we wanted a 1/1 flyer, we could have gone for the Fairy Miscreant, and you can't really count on pro red being great. Obviously there are several color combinations that don't involve the red at all. So I think we're probably going to pause on that. However, we do see Bone to Ash, and given that we have so many cheap creatures, perhaps a 4-mana counterspell that can also draw us a card would be a good thing to throw in there. We already have a Ripscale Predator. Already have a Frilled Sea Serpent. Those are both cards that aren't great in multiples, so I think I'm going to go for the Bone to Ash. Oh wow, well we got a Swiftwater Cliffs here. This is going to help us fix our mana. You know, we have a couple double red cards here that we're going to want to cast immediately, as well as some double blue, so I'm just going to take that up immediately. I mean, you really can't get enough Swiftwater Cliffs when it comes, or any dual land for that matter, when it comes to a limited format. I think one of the most underrated things you can do in like a Legacy or a Vintage Cube is go for mana fixing. It's just so essential. Okay, I've already got 1 Active Treason. It's not really a card I want to see multiples of in my deck. Same thing for a 6-drop. Zephyr Charge is not a bad card. I mean, we do have several creatures here that are not able to fly. Like, just imagine giving flying to the Unchained Berserker every turn. I mean, if you're attacking for 3 in the air every turn, you know, the opponent's going to have to find a way to deal with that. And this can also give flying to our larger creatures, such as Golos, such as the Stone Golem, should we end up playing that. You know, you've also got a 4-power creature and a 6-power creature here, so I'm going to take this Zephyr Charge. Alright. Not really anything that I want here. We already have all the grizzly bears that we need. We're too aggressive to try to use the milk piranhas, so I'll just take the scampering scorchers here. Let us see. Yeah. I think we've kind of got all of our playables, so we'll just take the one card in the pack. Uncaged Fury is not a bad card. I mean, 1/1 and double strike can serve as a removal as well as a way to finish off the game if we have a giant creature such as the Ripscale Predator. Let's go with that. Here we have another Scorch Spitter. It's aggressive. We've got enough 2 damage, so we don't need that. Let's just take a Ripscale Predator. The only other card we could actually cast, and then we'll end up finishing the game off with a Yoked Ox. And oh, there we go. So we've got some vault progress. Alright. So, immediately, let's get rid of the cards that are not in our color combination. We don't want that. We don't want the Sea Serpent. So whenever I'm trying to make some room and actually achieve our deck here, I just start removing the cards that I know for a fact I'm not going to play. Like, excuse me. These Prismites, we're not going to play. We have so many 2-drops that are better. We're just not going to play any of them. Let's see. 1 Goblin Smuggler is good enough for me. Active Treason is pretty marginal, although it is a little bit better in an aggressive deck, so something to consider. Scorcher is just not where I want to be at. You know, if our opponent has 2 or 3 creatures that have more than 1 toughness, it's just getting us nowhere. Okay, so that top end looks kind of fine. I'd still like to trim things down a little bit. We do have a lot of 1-drops. Pack Mastiff seems a little marginal. Let's get that last Prismite. Fry, again, we can't really count on that being able to remove the cards that we want, so let's dump that. Okay, so the question is this Sage's Road Denizen going to do anything? So how many blue creatures do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not very good, and this is just a 2-mana 2/3. So let's go ahead and kill that. We're going to lean a little bit more heavily on our aggressive elements here to help close the game out. So let's take a look at our curve. 12 creatures is pretty low. So maybe we need to consider getting rid of some things here in order to make sure that we can get those out. However, we do have a large creature at the top of our curve. Is there anything here that we want to continue to recur with the Flood of Tears? I think not. I think the card that fits our deck the most poorly is the Flood of Tears. So that puts us at 40 cards. However, the question is, what's our curve look like? So we have a tremendous amount of 2-drops. So the curve looks pretty fine. Do we want to cut a land to try to make room for something else? I think so. So we could potentially cut an island and bring in the Zephyr Charge to help us attack through this. I mean, we're really only playing this because we need playables, and you know, it might help us to have a large creature. We're looking to close the game a little bit earlier than that, which kind of makes me wish I had the unsummons, but with 3 shocks, you know, I don't feel so bad. So let's go ahead and name our deck, and keeping with the tradition of my typical draft deck names, I'm going to go with Bad. And the hallmark card of this deck is going to be Drawn from Dreams. Sure. However, we need to make sure that ends up in our deck. So let's go ahead and save. And let's get on with the games. Alright. So our opponent is going first, but we have both of our colors. We have an aggressive start here, so let's keep it. And you really want to mulligan as rarely as possible. So if we draw an Ember Hauler, we want to start off with a mountain. That way we can do 2 red sources. It looks like we have got a miracle. Go red. Well, that kind of sucks. So we are going to start off with a mountain, Unchained Berserker. Our plan is going to equip the Heart Piercer Bow, because that's going to allow us to kill a Cerulean Drake and attack it. You know what? Do we want to use that? I think we're just going to go ahead and go with the plan of playing the Heart Piercer Bow. So let's put that here. And of course we're going to attack. With that trigger, we're going to kill the 1/1 that has spell red. And if our opponent wants to trade here, that's fine. Because we're going to end up with an opponent. And of course I have a card on the battlefield here. That's pretty good. So let's go ahead and play our Swiftwater Cliffs. We just want to make sure that we can hit our big 6-drop here as soon as possible and potentially use this Reduce to Ashes on the Lavakin Brawler. So let's play the Ember Hauler. And because we have nothing, well, we might end up wanting to use that, so let's go ahead and go to the next turn. They won't attack us for free. We're okay with that. We're 1 life ahead, and we can, of course, attack them back and perhaps kill a creature with the Reduce to Ashes next turn. It'll all depend on what we're doing. Yeah. So there you go, Error Elemental. That's a prime. It's a giant flyer that blocks our flyers, and we're going to want to kill that. So let's kill that. We're obviously not going to be blocking here, so we just want to get in the damage while we can. We've got a big 6/5 here to potentially trade off with, or, you know, give us a faster clock than that Lavakin Brawler. Not happy about the shock, but worst things. And let's point out this there's that stage throw, guys. Very popular card in this format. Holy cow. Okay, so we have a total of 7 mana. So let's go ahead and play this Zephyr Charge. And I think we're in the mode that we just want to attack our opponent. We do have a pretty healthy amount of power on the board, and we're going to get the attack in. So let's get this little bad boy flying right here. Oh, you know what? Our opponent does have 8 power, so technically 9 power while they're attacking. They can even pump the Mastiff, so I think we just need to be able to draw some creatures to trade off with theirs. However, if we draw a Shock, we can always kill them, and we do have 3 of those in our deck. So I think I would rather go for that route. I'm just not going to win by trading off 1 at a time with their creatures. And I'll just lose here. So perhaps we misplayed that a little bit, but you know, it's okay. On to the next one. So let's give our terrible 12 creature aggro deck another chance here. Okay, so we're probably not going to keep this. We don't have any blue sources, and we have a double blue card in our hand. Although we are on the draw, we did trim a mountain, or excuse me, an island. So I don't really want to count on that. And we just have a slow hand, so let's mark it. Much happier to keep this. We're gonna dump the Infuriate because we have a few creatures. Gonna lead off with the mountain here. so that we can shock a creature. And obviously, if we end up with a second source, or red source, we want to get that Ember Hauler. We do not get one, so let's go ahead and run out the hard. There's a good shock target, so hopefully we get the opportunity to kill it. Opponent gets to gain 1 life. They've got Feral Invocation and Leafkin Druid. Okay. So let's go ahead and pass. Didn't draw our land, but, you know, that's okay. It happens. I mean, we are a 16 land deck. So we're going to go ahead and shock the Vulture here. We're killing as many of our opponent's creatures as we can. There we go. So we're going to play the Ember Hauler. I think if our opponent decides to attack us, we are not going to block. I want to use this Uncaged Fury if we can't draw anything else to deal with this Thicket Crasher. I mean, we're kind of in a precarious position here, so we need to take advantage of this. Yeah. So, looks like we're going to end up trying to trade off. Unfortunately, Maniacal Rage makes it so it can't block, so we can't use the Maniacal Rage to trade off with the Stone Golem after we use the Uncaged Fury to trade off with the Thicket Crasher. Yeah, our opponent just got bigger creatures than we do. This is going to be a little difficult to try to work our way through. It's one of the things that you can run into as a player with red creatures, is your opponent's creatures sometimes outclass yours. So what do we want to do here? We're going to go to 1. If we choose to double block and kill the Sorcerer of the Fang, we'll get to keep one of our creatures. Or we can double chump block and just hope to draw something. However, we're, you know, basically 2 mana away from casting anything. Tough choice. I think we're going to double chump block. We just want to buy ourselves some time. If we don't draw a creature, we're just going to... We're going to die anyway. So buy more time. Yeah, not looking good. I think we can come back from this. Got the Cloudkin Seer, prevent maximum of 4 damage, in which case we still lose. So our opponent's got this game, so not a great showing for our deck. You know, this is a deck that wants to be on the play. It is an aggressive deck, and
after 9/11, everyone was scared.
We're going to have a difficult time trying to contend with larger creatures when we're on the draw. Okay, so we are 0-2 to start off with, but we don't want to get discouraged. Just keep going for it. Fake it till you make it, you know. If anything, this could serve as a lesson in what deck is not to trap. But I think we started off with good intentions, but you know, trap where we spread ourselves too thin between an aggro deck and a control deck. However, you know, this looks like a decent start. We've got two drop creatures. We've got a removal spell. We've got a spell that's going to allow us to attack a little bit better in the Maniacal Rage. And we can start off with a tap land that fixes our mana. And it's all make up for the 1 life deficit that this Healer of the Glade leaves us with. So I think we're going to start off with the Goblin Bird Rally, because it has the potential to get flying over the top of this Mo Piranha. Not only that, but I try really hard not to put a maniacal rage on an Ember Hurler. You know, we're probably going to end up sacrificing it to kill something later, so... Ooh, opponent plays nothing. So our spirits are high. Let's get an additional mountain on here. And let's maniacal rage. I think I'm going to avoid attacking for now, because we're just going to trade off, you know, as a 2-for-1 with the smoke piranhas. We've got a flyer in the works here, so we'll save up for that. Okay, so that Lavakin Brawler represents a pretty nasty attack. Now here's the question, do we want to save the Bone to Ash? Or do we want to play the Ember Hauler? The Bone to Ash I think represents a greater ceiling, however a lower floor. We're not too behind on life totals, and we are about to have a 3-4 flyer, which can block pretty well. So I think we're going to go ahead and pass here. Kind of a tempo loss there, but if our opponent plays a creature, we're in good shape. We're going to take 5 here. Yeah, so we're kind of punished there for not attacking. Let's see, we could potentially draw land and then get the opportunity to attack. We also have Boreal Elemental. Excuse me. So we're slightly ahead of our opponent in terms of cards in hand. Of course, after they hit their draw phase, it'll be at parity. Let's see. The Goblin Smuggler has haste, so I think I want to get down this Boreal. I'm just not prepared to 2-for-1 myself against Piranhas. We'll catch up in life total. Okay, there we go. Wow, so we have quite a bit of damage here with the Uncaged Fury, potentially representing 10 damage. Let's go ahead and activate this now. And we'll attack our opponent for 7. Yeah, our opponent is kind of on the back foot now. So I'm perfectly happy to just hold up the Bone to Ash. You know, one of the things that could hurt us would be a giant spider. You know, 3/5 with reach would be difficult for our deck to beat. So I'm happy to be patient and counter that. Let's see. And let's make that. There we go. Let's attack for 7 again, leave them at 9, and then next turn we have a full attack. Let's get this Ember Hauler down. I don't know why we would need the Heart Piercer bow. I mean, they could potentially play a Cloud Conceer or one of the 2/1 first strike Flying Hawks. So we'll just throw that Heart Piercer bow down. Kind of help us hedge against that. Oh my gosh, we're going to see a double shock on the Boreal Elemental. Wow. Kind of a waste of resources. So if we really wanted to, we could kill the Moat Piranhas by equipping the Heart Piercer bow to the Ember Hauler. No, let's just equip it to the Grabber. I didn't really want to tap him out, but okay. Alright. No, I'd prefer that we didn't go to blockers. Wow. Well, thanks, Magic Arena. That's kind of lame. So we're not going to get the damage. We're going to have to sacrifice our Ember Hauler anyway. One of the things that you really have to pay attention to when you're playing Magic Arena is the way that it changes through phases. It likes to do it without consulting you pretty often. It can be really annoying, but something to pay attention to. So I recommend setting stops on your attack step and your main or your first main before going to combat. Okay, so here we're planning on spending 5 mana. We're probably going to play the Unchained Berserker and the Uncaged Fury. If they choose to block, we're going to get to kill their guy. Nope, we don't want that. We want to tap an island. If you ever need to undo how you tapped your mana, just go ahead and hit Control-Z. So let's go ahead and tap this here Goblin Smuggler. We're going to make the Unchained Berserker unblockable to get that last 3 damage in. Wait a minute. Oh, we just played that this turn. Well, that feels bad. Thought that granted haste as well, so bit of a mistake on my part. Try not to make that mistake in the future, I guess. All right. So it is going to get -4, -0, so it's going to become a 0-1. If we Uncaged Fury, we can still trade with the Keldon Marauders. Has double strike, so we're going to get the opportunity to kill this thing. So, not the best way to go about it, however, it's what we got. I think next turn we're probably going to plan on playing the Everhauler and then destroying the get that. Worry about the Heart Piercer though. Yikes. Alright, now we know this thing can attack. So let's think here. Holy crap, are you kidding me? Oh.
Anyone who stands in my way is getting
forward.
sizzled.
Move this back here. What can we do? They have a 2-turn clock with this no matter what. I think we just have to hit our opponent here. So, one thing I think
Get out of my
mythic
way.
rares, so
Or,
I mean,
you know,
if you die
don't.
to it, you die to it. What can you do? They are at 4. That sucks. Let's just shove it. Go ahead and see. Alright, so let's take a look at our performance here. Not something I'm usually happy to show off. We went 0-3. Typically I'll get to 7 wins, but I think we just kind of misjudged where we were going with our deck in the beginning. We kind of couldn't decide whether we were a blue-red control deck or a blue-red aggro tempo deck, so that's what you get for being indecisive in draft. Something to learn from. We do, however, get 50 gems in the pack, so let's take a look at this pack. Maybe we'll get a sweet mythic to oh, there we go. So that Sorin that we end up not rare drafting, there it is. So, it wasn't all for nothing. So, thanks everybody for joining me today. This has been Luke's MTG, and that was a terrible 0-3 Corset 2020 draft. Thanks for joining, and see ya.